Bag up, Terry. Put it reverse, Terry. Put it reverse. Oh, Lord, Jesus.
Welcome to Andy Staples On3. Happy birthday, America is a very special edition of the show. This is an edition not necessarily meant for the folks who normally watch and or listen to this show. So here's what I want you guys to do. You diehards, you faithful viewers and listeners, people who are with us every single day. I have an assignment for you. As you traverse the country this holiday weekend, as you go visit friends and family, I need you to pass this episode along. Think of your best friends, your relatives, your in-laws, people who love college football when college football is being played, but maybe aren't paying as much attention during the offseason. Because for these people, week one is going to come as a massive, massive shock. They need to understand what's coming. I thought with some of the Retraining Our Brain episodes we'd done that probably a good portion of the college football watching public is going to understand what's going on. But then my producer, River Bailey, was visiting with some friends this past weekend. River, I'm going to bring you on. We're going to talk about the conversation you had with some of your friends who are people who watch college football.
Yeah, so this past weekend, I was on a bachelor trip. We were on the lake, on the boat, meeting some new people that I had never met before. So naturally, we talk about our jobs, what we do. College football comes up. Of course it does. And these guys were LSU fans, Tennessee fans. I mean, they were diehard LSU fans. Like the LSU fan knew that, hey, Garrett Nussmeier is going to be our guy. Lance heard that Tennessee got from LSU. He left because of Emory Jones and Will Campbell. Very excited about Bryce Underwood. Very excited about Blake Baker coming back as the DC. So, like, he knew ball. And he started saying, like, yeah, I think we can make the playoffs even if we go 9-3. And I'm like, potentially. Like, it'd be hard, but yeah. And then we started talking about the qualifications for the 12-team playoff. Didn't know about the group of 5. And then I was like, yeah, Washington and Oregon going to the Big Ten makes it a little dicey for the Big Ten. And he's like, oh, they're joining this year. I was like, yep. And then, the Arizona and Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, they're in the Big 12 now. And that Washington State and Oregon State are playing a predominantly Mountain West schedule. And like they knew ball about their favorite team, but they didn't know ball about the grand scheme of things. And I was like, I can't go to any more of these and be around these casuals. We have to do a PSA for the people to let them know that, hey, things are changing and you need to know it so you don't look like a buffoon at these events and all the functions.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing. There are other college football shows where they look down on casual fans. I do not. We here at Andy Staples On3, we love the casual fans because we know if you start watching, you're not going to be a casual fan anymore. And so we want you to come into our tent. And so here's what I want everyone to do, because River, didn't you have a friend this week say that they thought Tennessee had a chance to win the SEC East?
Yes. One of the guys was like, yeah, I think we got a really good shot for the East this year. And that's just maybe typical summer talk. But I was like, whoa. That's not happening.
No such thing.
That doesn't exist.
These people live among you, friends. These people are your relatives. They are your in-laws. They are your friends from college. They are your friends from high school. They need your help. So here's what I want everybody to do. River, you already know who you need to send this one to. But think of the 5 people in your life who are definitely going to be watching college football week 1, who are going to be tuned in, who are going to be absolutely flabbergasted by what has happened in this sport. Think of all those people, make a list, and send them this episode. You can send it to them in podcast form. You can send them the YouTube video. You can send it to them from Twitter. However you want to send it to, whatever the easiest way for them to digest it is, send it to them. And for all of you who've had a friend, someone in your life send you this episode, first thank them because they love you and they're looking out for you. But also welcome. we love you too. Your money spends just as good on our sponsors as the Diehards does. So we love you. Come on in, support the sponsors. And I think you're going to enjoy this because we talk about college football every day here on this show, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, in season and out of season. So we've been here among the sickos and we've been talking about all the stuff that's going to happen because we're fascinated by what's going to happen. But we're going to pull it back. So my regular sickos, you know all this stuff. Your job right now is to pass this along to everybody in your life who may need to hear this information. And I guarantee you there are people, because I see it myself. I go to the kids' sporting events or my daughter's ballet recital, and I get the same types of things that River heard this weekend where, you think Florida's got a chance in the East? No, I don't think anybody has a chance in the East because that's not how the SEC works anymore. So we gotta work on this. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go conference by conference and explain what has happened. And then we're gonna explain the 12-team playoff because all of this stuff is interwoven. All of it matters. And you need to know all of it before the season starts because it will help you enjoy the season more once the season starts. It's confusing. I get it. Like even us sickos sometimes get caught. I say Power 5. You know, Power 5 is not a thing anymore, right? There are not 5 power conferences. There are really only 2. Yeah, so River hits the buzzer every time I say Power 5 on the show. But there are really only 2 power conferences, but then there's 2 other ones that are more powerful than the others, but not as powerful as the other 2. It's all going to make sense in the next few minutes. So let us start in the Big Ten. We'll start in the Big Ten because this is going to be an 18-team league. This is going to be the superest of the super conferences right now. It's massive. We knew that USC and UCLA were joining the Big Ten. We found out about that in 2022. We knew that they were coming in 2024. We did not know until last year that Oregon and Washington were coming too. That happened on the day the Pac-12 fell apart. That was a day last August when the Pac-12 was trying to figure out, are we going to do a TV deal or not, or schools going to kind of look elsewhere? What happened? Schools looked elsewhere. The Big Ten picked up Oregon and Washington on a discount, realizing there's nothing to save. Arizona State, Utah joined Colorado, which had already decided to go to the Big 12. Now you have an 18-team Big Ten. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington are Big Ten teams. So, like, Oregon plays Ohio State this year. They play in Eugene. That is not a Rose Bowl. That is a regular season game. USC plays at Michigan. The schedules are very different. Divisions are dead. So there's no more Big Ten East, no more Big Ten West. There's no more Penn State is being held back by Ohio State and Michigan. The excuses for Penn State are gone. There's a 12-team playoff. You don't have to worry about playing Ohio State and Michigan and beating them to win the division every year. In fact, they don't even play Michigan this year. Penn State does not play Michigan this year, but both of them do play USC, if that makes sense, which I know it might not. So the number 1 and number 2 teams in the Big Ten, the best conference records, will play for the conference title at the end of the season. It has nothing to do with divisions anymore. So no more of will Iowa or Purdue or Wisconsin be the tallest Oompa Loompa in the Big Ten. That's over. We don't do that anymore. They have to compete with the best teams in the Big Ten. So Iowa, which will still have a great defense, they've replaced their offensive coordinator. So we can't make any more nepotism jokes about Iowa. Brian Ferentz was fired as the offensive coordinator. Kirk Ferentz remains the head coach, but Kirk Ferentz has hired Tim Lester as the offensive coordinator. So We can still make jokes about Iowa having an unfunctional offense unless Iowa proves it has a functional offense. Once that happens, then we lose our jokes. But no more nepotism jokes for Iowa either. That's how the Big Ten is going to work. Remember, new teams. UCLA and USC, we knew they were coming. Washington and Oregon jumped on board. They're there now too. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. You could have an Oregon-Ohio State Big Ten championship game. You could have a USC-Michigan Big Ten championship game. You could have a Penn State-Oregon Big Ten championship game. A lot of different iterations here. A lot of ways to play this. Now, let's move to the SEC. Also, getting some new members. On July 1st, earlier this week, Oklahoma and Texas officially joined the SEC. We've known since 2021 that they were coming. As Rivers' friend said, he thought maybe this year Tennessee could win the East. Now, there are a lot of reasons why that statement is wrong. It's not necessarily because I think Tennessee is going to be bad, but if the East still existed, Georgia would still be in it. So you wouldn't have a chance to win the East anyway. Georgia was going to win the East if the East still existed, but the East does not exist. So now the teams that were in the SEC East can also no longer say, well, at least we play Vandy every single year. Because you don't. You don't know how often you're going to play Vanderbilt going forward. In fact, the SEC schedule is kind of up in the air after 2025. But again, we're not going to worry about that. We're only going to worry about 2024. 2024, Oklahoma's in, Texas is in. They, of course, will still play their annual game at the Cotton Bowl, just like Florida and Georgia play their annual game in Jacksonville. So you SEC fans used to seeing Florida and Georgia playing in a neutral site, Texas and Oklahoma also play their rivalry game at a neutral site. No divisions. As we said, this is a big relief for the schools that were in the SEC West. Ole Miss is like, thank God. We don't have to play Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Texas A&M every single year anymore. For the teams in the East, it's like, oh, crap. Now we have to play Alabama, Auburn, and LSU more? Plus you get Texas, plus you get Oklahoma. Yeah, it's a tough road. But the thing you need to remember, all SEC schedules are not created equal. That is one thing. Now, they weren't equal before. The teams in the West had it tougher than the teams in the East. If you were Tennessee, which had to play Alabama annually, if you were Auburn, which had to play Georgia across divisions annually, things were tougher for you. But now it's going to be a little more random. Your schedule draw matters quite a bit. Texas got a nice draw coming into the SEC. Oklahoma did not. Oklahoma's final two games are against Alabama and at LSU. And of course, they still have to play Texas. And Tennessee comes to them. And they've got to go to Auburn. And they got to go to Missouri. Missouri's good still, by the way. In case you're wondering, that wasn't just a flash in the pan last year. Missouri, still good right now. So Oklahoma, not the easiest path. Missouri, I just mentioned, they got a little more manageable schedule. Ole Miss got a more manageable schedule. Remember, we said, well, Lane Kiffin's got to prove he can beat Alabama. No, he doesn't. He doesn't even play them this year. They do get Georgia in Oxford. So you get essentially the same level of talent, same kind of thing. Nick Saban's gone anyway. You get the new Darth Vader, you get Kirby Smart. But more manageable, not easy, but more manageable for Ole Miss, more manageable for Tennessee. The most brutal schedule handed out by the SEC, well, that goes to the Florida Gators. Now, Florida does not help itself by having Miami and UCF in addition to its annual game against Florida State on this year's schedule. But listen to this Final Four SEC game. Listen to this. Georgia and Jacksonville, Texas and Austin, and then you're back home, but you play LSU and Ole Miss. And then after that, because it's an even-numbered year, the Gators go to Tallahassee, where they have to play a Florida State team that won 13 games last year, won the ACC, and is probably going to be really good again this year. That is a brutal, brutal schedule. And proof positive, that all SEC schedules not created equal. So if you're a Texas fan, hey, they're welcoming you with open arms. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you're like, hey, wait, look, you could have cut us the same break. But at least you're not a Florida fan, because that schedule is rough. Let us move to the Big 12 now. The Big 12, if you are a fan of a team that plays in the ACC or the Big 10 or the SEC, and that's who you watch most of the time, your casual college football viewing, this game's on, I want to watch it. A lot of it's going to come from the Big 12. I'm telling you that right now. Even if you haven't watched a lot of Big 12 football before. First of all, it's not every team running the air raid anymore. It's not all 67 to 65 games. This has become a more ground-based league. Everybody's stolen what Iowa State does on defense. So it's a much more diverse league stylistically, schematically. The thing that's going to make it so interesting this year is there are no kind of giant big dogs at the top. Everybody is somewhat equal here. They're not completely equal. Like, we're not expecting Houston or Cincinnati. Oh, by the way, yeah, Houston and Cincinnati and BYU and UCF, they're in the Big 12. Remember, they joined last year. You might not remember that, but they're in the Big 12 too. But we might not expect huge things out of Houston or Cincinnati, but like some of the newcomers, Utah, Arizona, we think they have a chance to win it. Kansas State has a chance to win it. Oklahoma State, which played for the Big 12 title last year against Texas, has a chance to win it. Colorado, Coach Prime, Dion, they're coming back to the Big 12. Remember, Colorado was in the Big 12, left for the then Pac-10, which became the Pac-12. Well, now they're back. And Coach Prime and company, they got a puncher's chance. There's a lot of teams that have a puncher's chance. In fact, we can probably name 10 Big 12 teams that it would not be completely surprising if they wound up winning the league. And that's what's going to make their games in October and November so much fun. Now, we're going to get to how the playoff works in a minute. But understand that the winner of the Big 12 is more than likely going to be one of the top 4 seeds in the playoff. They are playing for a very big prize. And with all these teams that have a legitimate chance, it is going to be a bloodbath in October and November in the Big 12, and it's going to be spectacular to watch. But yes, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah join. Colorado rejoins. I know what you're saying. What happened to the Pac-12? We will get to that in a minute. First, we got to go to the ACC. This is the one where if you've not spent much time with the offseason news, it is going to get very confusing when conference play begins, because you're going to say, why are Cal and Stanford playing all these ACC teams? The answer, they are in the ACC. Cal, Stanford, and SMU join the ACC this year. I'll say it again. Cal and Stanford, which their campuses are within 10 miles each of the Pacific Ocean, are in the Atlantic Coast Conference. SMU basically said, you don't even have to give us any money. You don't even have to give us a split of the TV money. We've got rich donors. We just want to be part of the club. So they get to come too. It is going to be fascinating to watch. Now, the ACC ditched divisions last year. So theirs is a number 1 versus number 2 championship game, just like the SECs will be, just like the Big Tens will be. But how this is all going to work, the schedules are very different. They're very weird. Miami got a really nice schedule draw. Florida State's is it's all right, but it's harder than Miami's. Clemson, NC State, they're going to be contenders for this thing. We'll see what happens with Louisville, which played for the championship last year. SMU's an interesting new entry. Remember, SMU won the American Athletic Conference last year. They opened conference play with a visit from Florida State in September. It's going to be a very odd situation in the ACC, but the ACC is an odd place right now because Perhaps you've also missed this other set of news from the ACC. Did you know the two best football schools in the ACC, Clemson and Florida State, well, they're suing the ACC. The ACC is suing them back. This is all a big argument about television rights, about money, and basically Clemson and Florida State want out. North Carolina wants out too, but they're not saying the quiet part out loud. Florida State and Clemson are. All of that may come to a head at some point this season. We don't know. We don't know. That's sort of working its way through the court system right now. But the ACC is going to be wild. And yes, Cal and Stanford, ACC teams. The band is on the field game, now a part of ACC history, apparently. So what happened to the Pac-12? Well, I just mentioned where most of the teams went. If you were counting, you realize there are two that I haven't mentioned yet. So that would be Oregon State and Washington State. These are the two that got royally screwed by conference realignment. They did not have a landing spot. So did they go join another conference? No, they did not. They went to court with the other members of the Pac-12 before they left the Pac-12, and they won. So they keep the name, they keep the logo, they keep a lot of the money, and so they are, at least for the next 2 years, the Pac-12 officially, but of course we're going to call them the two-pack because there's only two teams. So will it be all eyes on the two-pack? Will they have to run Hail Marys every play? I'd say they ain't mad at you, but they are pretty mad at Oregon and Washington and Arizona State. I'm running out of Tupac songs here, but you get the point. That's it. That's the league. Now, what does that mean? Well, their champion, such as it is, like the winner of the game between the two teams, is not declared the champion, does not get an automatic spot in the playoff. They will play a schedule that looks an awful lot like a Mountain West schedule. They basically made a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West to give their football teams a schedule. So Oregon State, Washington State will play a lot of Mountain West teams. That probably tells you the future. More than likely, they're all going to come together into some kind of league. But they don't have to do that right now. They have 2 years to figure all this out. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to take their time. So that's what's going on with them. The group of five, it's still the same conferences. It's still Conference USA, the MAC, the Sun Belt, the American Athletic Conference, and the Mountain West. We'll get into who among them might represent the group of five in the playoff. There is one addition to the FBS this year. Welcome, Kennesaw State. If you don't know where Kennesaw State is, it's suburban Atlanta, essentially. 134 teams in the FBS right now, all vying for a national championship. Most of them don't have an actual chance to win the national championship, but more of them do than ever before because there is now a 12-team playoff. So let's talk about how the 12-team playoff works, because it's college football. You know, it can't possibly be as simple as you pick the best 12 teams and you seed them 1 through 12. No, that is not how this is going to work. Would it make sense if they worked that way? Yeah. But what fun would that be? College football is all about not making sense. So college football is all about being difficult to decide. This is why you get your friends texting you this episode, because your friends still struggle with some of this stuff. Guaranteed. Even though they've been paying attention to it all year, I still struggle with some of this stuff, and it's my job. So here's how the 12-team playoff is going to work. The top 4 seeds are reserved for conference champs and conference champs only. So what does that mean? It means if the 2 best teams in the country are in the SEC champion is going to be the number 1 seed, and the second best team in the SEC, which might be the second best team in the country, is going to be the number 5 seed. This also applies to Notre Dame, which cannot play for a conference championship because it is not in a conference in football. So the highest Notre Dame can finish seeded is 5. I'll say it again because it doesn't make total sense when you first say it. The highest Notre Dame can be seeded is 5. So if Notre Dame goes 12-0, they do not play a conference championship game. They are not in a conference. They cannot win a conference to get one of the top 4 seeds. They are number 5. Now, what's important about those top 4 seeds? You get a bye. You do not have to play in the first round. The first round involves teams 5 through 12. Teams seeded 5 through 8 host on campus. Teams seeded 9 through 12 are the visiting teams in those games. The next round will be played at bowls. The semifinals will then be played at bowls, and then the national title game will be played at a neutral site. I know what you're saying. This is incredibly stupid. Why don't they just play on campus until they get to the championship game? That would be the smart thing to do, but they expanded before the first contract ended. They've been getting greased by the bowl people for decades. They can't quite figure out that college football is better on campus. They will. Once that first week of college football playoff games on campus happens, they're going to go, oh God, we were so stupid to put these in bowl games. They'll understand that, but it'll be too late. And it'll take more years for them to get it right. But yeah, probably eventually they will. So here's how it works. So again, your top 4 seeds, conference champions. So it's probably going to be the SEC or the Big Ten champ in some order at 1 and 2. And then the ACC or the Big 12 champ at 3 and 4, probably. Now, look, let's say Florida State runs the table and they've just been awesome all season. They could be 1 or 2. Certainly possible. But they aren't getting left out like they were last year. Remember, 13-0 last year, ACC champ left out of the college football playoff because it was only 4 teams. Florida State would be guaranteed one of the top 4 seeds at 13-0 and the champion of the SEC, champion of the ACC. So you're going to be looking at a couple different points. Like, does my team win the conference championship game? If your team loses in the conference championship game, they're in worse shape probably than a team that missed the conference championship game because they might wind up being seated lower. They might have to go on the road. They definitely would have to play one more game to win the national title. If you lose your conference championship game, you're going to have to play 17 games to win the national title. So that's not great. That's not a great situation. The number 5 team probably has the biggest advantage the way this playoff works because, remember, I said the top 4 seeds are guaranteed to be conference champs, but there are 5 automatic bids. The highest ranked group of 5 team also gets an automatic bid into the playoff. Now, it could be a top 4 seed if it's good enough. But if it's not good enough, if it's not one of the 4 highest ranked conference champs, then it's going to be wherever it winds up or number 12. Last year, Liberty was the highest ranked group of 5 champ. They would be number 12 this year. They finished, I believe, number 22 in the final college football playoff rankings. They would be number 12. So remember, I said number 5 gets the most advantageous position because number 5 plays number 12, and number 5 is at home. Number 12 is on the road. So you're going to get probably the highest ranked group of 5 champ if you're the 5 seed. The winner of the 5-12 game then plays number 4, which is a team that probably also finished lower in the college football playoff rankings than number 5 did. But they were a conference champ, so they are ranked higher, or they're seeded higher. So the 5 seed is probably a favorite its first 2 games in the playoff. Once you get to the semifinals, all bets are kind of off at that point. But 5 seed is not a bad place to be, which is a lot of the reason why Notre Dame went for this plan, even though it meant Notre Dame could never have a bye. Because they're like, you know what? We have a great season. We're the 5 seed. We get a home game. We're probably going to slide into the semis. Nothing wrong with that. It's going to be confusing for everyone. I promise. ESPN is going to have to spend so much time educating people on this as we get into October, November. But here's the other thing about October and November. There are going to be a lot more games that are meaningful in terms of the playoff. In the 14 playoff, really about 6 or 7 teams were still in contention in November. There's going to be about 20 teams in contention for the 12 spots, maybe even more. depending on how the group of 5 situations play out, depending on how many teams are kind of clustered between 10 and 17 in the last few weeks of the season. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to create games that we normally wouldn't have paid much attention to that now will be big time circumstances for the teams playing in them, but also for other teams around the country. There'll be a lot of scoreboard watching. So it'll be very interesting to see how much this changes those games. And does it make people want to watch them? I think it will. But it's going to be confusing at first. So it's all right. We're all going to get through this together. Any questions? Come watch the show. We talk about it every single day. We have a Dear Andy segment every week where you just ask me questions and I answer them. So you can find me at Andy_Staples on X. You can find me at Andy_Staples on Instagram. Andy Staples On3 @gmail.com. If you'd like to email me your question, happy to answer. If you came to this show because your friend sent it to you, thank that friend. I hope you liked it. Hope you want to keep coming because we have a lot of fun on this show. College football is the most fun sport in America. It's also the most ridiculous because if you notice, I just spent 30 minutes explaining how this season is going to work. Like, the NFL doesn't have to do that. The NBA doesn't have to do that. But college football is its very own unique special thing. And sometimes it's a little confusing, but I think that's part of its charm. So everybody have a happy, healthy, safe holiday weekend. Please pass this to your friends. If you got this episode, now hopefully you know what to say when you get on the lake, when you gather around the grill, when you're at the pool, when you're at the beach. The season's coming before we know it. Be ready. Cannot wait. And I hope you'll join us for the whole ride. Thanks for watching.
Oh, Steve! What you doing, Terry?